Hi, hello.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy.
Hello. Wow, I'm so surprised. So many of you showed up here today. Hello, this is Willie. I recently attended the developer Q&A and I made this video to share what I found out. First off, what I want to say is that we want to focus more on the answers we got rather than the detailed conversation that day. So let me explain the background for this meeting. The goal of this meeting was to acknowledge the communication issues we've had so far and to kick off smoother communication going forward. Now, let me introduce who from Needs Games and Line Games attended the meeting. From Needs Games, the director Song Sung Sub was there, and we had the planning director and the development project manager. From Line Games, the marketing manager who organized this meeting, along with 2 business project managers, and about 3 more people, but they kept coming in and out, so didn't get a chance to ask who they were. At the beginning, since it was our first time meeting, everyone was a bit cautious, but thankfully the Undecember team was very attentive and listened to what we had to say. The answers were great, keeping the vibe relaxed. However, there were moments when some points were emphasized a bit strongly now for the part everyone was most curious about. Unfortunately, when it comes to the business model, it's something the game company has to carefully consider, so I'll mostly speak on behalf of my own wording. First off, the issue with the BM is something that's not just a problem for Undecember, but also for most Korean games. It's the fact that the item drop rate is low and rare items can only be obtained through a gacha system, making them hard to get. For the premium relic of Undecember, such as Comet's Perch or Castor's Vision or something like that, in cases like this, players should have the option to either invest time to obtain the items they want or to spend money. There should be a choice. However, currently, the only way to obtain these items is through the gacha system. It raises the important question of whether there's a possible solution to this issue. Regarding this matter, since Line Games, the publishing company, must take the company's profitability into account, we weren't able to get an immediate answer. However, they did mention that they are paying attention to positive reviews and are considering gradual adjustments moving forward. I believe it would have been difficult to get a more detailed answer at that moment. Now, if the gacha were to be removed, they would have to consider how the company could generate revenue. There are other ways to generate income, such as through beauty, passes, and enticing packages for users to buy. But unfortunately, in my opinion, at this moment, I don't think gacha system will be removed from Undecember. This is because the game company is already generating income from it, and players who enjoy the gacha system certainly exist. I mean, there are definitely players who are drawn to the gacha system, and it's clear that this system has a strong appeal for a lot of people. Given that the current main source of income for the company likely comes from gacha, completely eliminating it may not be a viable option at this point. Most of the opinions we raised were about how gacha should be removed, but unfortunately we couldn't get a definitive answer on whether or not it would be removed. However, they did mention that they are considering gradual adjustments. If Undecember had a larger player base, shifting towards other revenue sources like beauty or battle passes might be more beneficial in the long run, even if there's a short-term dip in revenue. It seems like it would be a much better direction, but with the current situation where the Undecember player base isn't large, I think it's unrealistic to expect revenue from anything other than gacha. As a simple player who just wants to enjoy the game, it would naturally be better if gacha wasn't there. I also prefer not having the gacha in the game. That said, I'm relieved that the game company seems to share this view. I believe that if the drop rate is improved to guarantee a certain level of rewards, it could create a more natural transition towards removing gacha entirely. What about the current balance? As mentioned in the BM issue, the drop rates are too low, and it feels like the game is pushing players to spend money to solve it. I believe the drop rates must be adjusted because it's impossible to discuss balance without mentioning them. However, instead of constantly raising the drop rates for low-value items, I think it's better to increase the drop rates for items that are actually useful and commonly used. I think it's right for items of that type to be significantly upgraded, and the game company needs to find the appropriate level through continuous testing. Also, as the dependence on Ancient and Transcendence item builds increases, we can't help but question the drop rates for these items. Let's hear what they responded to.
There could be several ways to approach this. The ones that come to mind right now, and what we're discussing are, first, directly lowering the difficulty. Second, creating a pathway that allows players to reach this point, even if they haven't played up to it yet. One option could be increasing the drop rate. I also remember a lot of people talking about a disassemble shop. We're currently working on rebalancing, and we're planning to make adjustments before players bring it up. Our goal is to ensure a minimum level of growth for players, little by little. As for transcendent items, we'll look for ways to obtain them from places other than Resurrected Champion of God and the black market. We want to gradually introduce more variety and create a well-structured path for players to progress. We're currently discussing this internally, and we're preparing things so that players can really feel their growth.
Do you think there is a game that perfectly balances everything? Unfortunately, personally, I can't think of one. All game companies are always thinking about balance adjustments, but in the case of Undecember, it's noticeably quite slow, to the point of being frustrating. The diversity of skills that users think of is really just about simply trying out many different skills widely and find the one that works best for them and switch things up easily. But what I found surprising is that in Undecember, skill diversity is more about figuring out how to use the skill you've chosen in as many different ways as possible. It's not just about having a ton of options, but how to make the most of the skills you decide to use. Let me share what our development director thinks.
For example, Rapid Shot was designed for single target damage, but by using things like Chain Link runes or Awakening, it can also be great for mapping. That's the kind of variety we're aiming for in this hack and slash game.
So we had different interpretations of diversity, but the important point here was to align our understanding of diversity to some extent and move in the same direction. The Undecember team also strongly agreed with this perspective on direction.
I think what you're talking about is playing at a comfortable level and enjoying the game. It's about mixing things up, experimenting, and trying different approaches to see what works. As you play, you'll find skills that match your playstyle and feel fun to use. Then you can dig deeper and master them. The goal is to let players pick what they want to explore and focus on. That's the direction we're aiming for.
And we also got to hear about skills that are essential when it comes to balance.
When it comes to skill runes, link runes, and overall balance, our main focus has been on buffing the skills that are underused or just too weak. We really want to make sure all skills are viable and fun to use. But of course, if some skills become too powerful, we may need to nerf them to maintain balance.
As we see it, there are only skills that got nerfed, but none that got buffed. If some skills are getting nerfed, there should be some getting buffed too, but that's been missing.
We'll do our best to closely monitor the situation and make sure we catch as many issues as possible, aiming to address 99% of them.
Additionally, YouTuber GameCode brought up a suggestion about changing how Transcendent relics are obtained, proposing that they could become world drops instead.
We've seen some opposition to making Transcendence tier relics world drops. Instead, we're planning to diversify, like holding regular Holy Ancient Essence events, where players can earn rewards without making them too scarce. We're considering various approaches.
We then moved on to discussing Undecember's direction, whether it would focus on seasons or standard servers. The first question was whether the game's future would lean more towards seasons or standard server. The response was that there are users who find both enjoyable, but they mentioned that they plan to give a slight advantage to the season, which is believed to have a lower entry barrier for new users.
In the season, we're looking at offering a bit more seasonal content, or making it a bit more affordable, and doing so more frequently. That's the kind of distinction we're aiming for. On the other hand, when it comes to the standard mode, don't play the standard. This is not the direction we're going for.
At first, as you already know, there were no seasons. Then we introduced seasons, but the approach became a bit off for a while. After that, we decided to strengthen the seasonal system, while also making sure to take care of standard players. Now we're carefully considering various options and approaches.
The problem is, even if standard players join a season, the drop rates are so low that it'll take at least 2 to 3 months to get a decent setup. So it feels like the only options are either paying to speed things up or just casually playing and finishing in standard. In the end, you should be able to enjoy everything in a season, but right now it feels more like just a boosted server. We've heard feedback about this too.
We know we can't change everything all at once, but we'll work on improving things step by step. When we said we were going to strengthen the seasonal system, our goal is to make it so that over time, players will be able to reach the end game content within a season, like you mentioned. It might take some time to get there, but we're working on creating that kind of environment. To start, the seasonal buffs we've added right now are at a decent level for the rebirth system. We might even make it a bit higher to help newer returning players get settled in more easily. We're aiming to keep improving that so players can really feel the difference, making it easier for them to progress and enjoy the game.
And the reason for using standard server is because I'm not fond of resets, so I asked why certain features such as the Chaos Statue, Zodiac Stone, and Chaos Rune are reset.
We could consider the idea of not resetting the Chaos Runes completely. As for the Zodiac Stones, there might be some systematic issues with the ones that existing players already have accumulated, but we'll still try to figure out a fair solution.
There's this issue. The content that's been reset from the start was designed with that reset in mind, so technically it's built to work that way. If we don't reset it, the system wasn't set up to handle it, so there are some things we just can't do. While it might seem like everything looks the same to users in the game, the system is actually designed in a way that ensures it always resets. Because of this setup, the reset has to happen and can't be skipped. We need to take a closer look at this.
And there's the special gift event from the director this time. As you know, this was originally intended to be given as a thank you coupon, but since it was distributed as part of an event, looks like it ended up in your mailbox. At first, there was also a limit on the quantity to some extent. It is true that we talked a bit about the items. However, we were quite surprised because this release included far more rewards than we had expected. In fact, what we discussed was also, well, I was a little worried that this might be reduced based on what Undecember has done so far. However, it turned out to be the opposite of what I expected, and I was surprised. We also got to hear the director's thoughts on the matter.
At first, I think we should carefully determine the value of the new user rewards, and then create corresponding coupons that can be offered to existing users as well.
You mentioned that this doesn't mean much to these users. So then wouldn't it be right to include sprinters as well, or something along those lines?
That would be great. We are now.
This time, I think the reward was unprecedented. Some might think of it as a consolation prize, while others might see it as a gift of gratitude. It depends on the person receiving it, and those who accept it take that perspective based on comparing past experiences playing Undecember and how things were handled before. Anyway, there is hope that with more effort, Undecember show noticeable changes at a faster pace progressively.
Hi, this is Song Sung Sub, Director of Undecember. Thanks to this meeting, we've received your valuable feedback, and we're truly grateful. You've shared so many great suggestions, and while we couldn't cover them all, it was a meaningful experience. The development team is now working hard to incorporate your feedback into the next update, and holding multiple meetings and discussions to find the best possible solutions. In Season 7, we'll not only showcase exciting new content we've been working on, but also include the meaningful changes based on your suggestions, so we hope you look forward to it. Starting with this Q&A, we'll strive to find more ways to connect with you and improve the experience. Thank you.
Okay, lastly, the overall assessment. Through this Q&A, I definitely felt that Undecember is willing to communicate with users. When they first contacted me, my expectations for Undecember were quite low, and I visited the game company without high hopes, but the game director at the meeting, I was actually very surprised to see them attend. I didn't think they would come. Of course, unfortunately, not many users could participate in the meeting, so when I said I would talk about the atmosphere, I also think that those who already have no trust in Undecember will not believe it. Therefore, I really want to request this from Undecember. We have already waited for 3 years. There are people who continue playing the game, some who have quit, and others who are returning. Some new users are just starting too. If you want to make users feel that you're communicating and reaching out, you need to show them something they can truly feel as soon as possible, rather than sticking strictly to company procedures or rules. Like this Director's Gift event. While it's great that this gift event is taking the lead, I believe it should not go beyond that. The event should simply serve as a gesture of gratitude and apology and shouldn't be given more importance than that. Our communication should not be ended with a gift event, right? Anyway, it's clear that Undecember is trying to communicate more and think from the user's perspective. I think we really connected on a lot of points during the meeting. I genuinely hope that the expectations I had as a user will be met with real satisfaction in game. I'm counting on it. That's it. In this first video, we briefly covered the main structure regarding BM, balance, the season, and standard server. In the next second video, we will address some lighter questions that we couldn't cover in the first one. Thank you. This was Willie.